How did you feel like knowing that Russian soldiers could breach in at any moment?
Yeah, I panicked a bit. It was my first time ever at that point, experiencing like war, I guess, firsthand.
We need to leave.
Listen what we say.
Dude, that was like one of the scariest moments of my life, like easily. This is the idea of like doing casualty evacuation off the front line. It's like messy, claustrophobic. You're always at risk, right? Like we're running around with lights on. Drone attacks are so frequent, but these little drones can cause a ton of damage, a ton of tiny little pieces of shrapnel. Like it's never like orderly or organized or well done. It feels like it's always chaotic. The Russians also use fiber optic drones. So if the Russians are using that, there's nothing that can actually protect you. Back in 2023, you could get like super close to the contact line. But nowadays, you can't get like 4 kilometers to where Russian positions are without being like obliterated by drones, essentially. So, I mean, like you were constantly at risk. Like, you didn't feel safe anywhere.
FPV is back on the monitor.
If you would see your vehicle or whatever in the frame of this drone detector, like there's not much you can do to hide. So you're like, you open the door and you just hear like in like drones, I swear to,
Oh,
yeah, dude. And drones are like 15 feet, right? Like they're just skimming like right above the roof. You just like hear
oh,
the, I'm like peering out of this like outhouse watching the drone
oh
just fly over. And
no.
I'm like, oh my God, please not now, man. Like,
Friends, today I have a special guest. His name is Alex and he's a subscriber of the channel. But more importantly, he's a Canadian paramedic serving in Ukraine as a combat medic since 2022. He did 4 tours in Ukraine and is preparing for a 5th one. And today he's here to talk about his experience. I have a funny anecdote actually. Using Starlink, he was watching my videos about the fall of Avdiivka while sitting in Avdiivka under enemy attack. So today we'll explore his journey from what led him to Ukraine to what it's like to save lives under drones, artillery, and the threat of Russian FAB bombs on one of the most lethal battlefields of our time. But before we start, a quick word from today's sponsor. A guy just won $1 million by creating an AI film using VO3 on the stage of the 1 billion followers summit hosted by the UAE government. And the most recent reports from Forbes show that employees who use AI at work are earning 40% more than those who don't. So the question is simple. Will you watch this shift or win from it? That's why today's sponsor is Outscale, the first ever AI-focused educational platform to accelerate AI learning for people like you and me. They're hosting a 2-day AI Mastermind training live this Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on both days. And right now is the perfect moment to join because you can get in absolutely for free for the next 48 hours. The 16 hours AI training has already built over 10 million AI first professionals worldwide and is rated 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot. People from marketing, finance, operations, product, and engineering join because this is not something specific to any industry, but something that is now needed across every one of them. This is where you learn how to build AI agents that plan, write, execute, and report for you. Automate workflows that run even while you sleep. Connect tools like Sheets, Notion, CRMs, and email to create profitable systems. Use AI to save hours every week and get an unfair advantage at work. Not just that, you'll also learn how to profit from these skills. To kickstart your year, you also get premium lifetime bonuses like the AI Prompt Bible, the AI Profit Roadmap, and your personalized AI Toolkit Builder. But only if you attend both days. And here's the interesting part. When you sign up, you'll get access to the 2026 AI Survival Hackbook, a comprehensive compilation of the upcoming AI shifts in 2026 and the practical steps you can take to be prepared. Seats are limited. Use the link in the description below to join. And don't forget to join the WhatsApp community to stay updated before the big blast.
Hi, Alex. Welcome to the show. Can you tell us a bit more about your background and how you ended up as a combat medic in Ukraine?
Yeah, so I'm also Alex, and thanks for having me on the show here. So I'm a paramedic in Ontario. I've worked for about 5 years now. Back when the war started in 2022, I was like just glued to my phone. I knew that I had some training, and I knew that Ukraine was lacking in medical like a support, I guess. So I thought that was probably the best way to get into the country. So I started just training soldiers like territorial defense or police.
So hold on. When did you get to Ukraine? Start
Yeah,
from the
so
beginning.
all right, yeah. So I first got into Ukraine in June of 2022. So I started up with another paramedic. We brought some ambulances into the country. Um, Shortly after that, I made my way to Zaporizhia, where I was training territorial defense and the police in the city on like basic trauma management, how to apply tourniquets, how to pack wounds, use hemostatics, that kind of thing. I was networking quite a bit, so I started off slow. Went back to Canada, but came back in the beginning of November of 2022, right when Kherson was liberated. At that point, I was running a Signal group chat with volunteers that had a few hundred in it. So somebody had reached out, a civilian ambulance company, looking for paramedics to do medevac missions out of Kherson. I wanted to get more into the action at that point. I felt like I had some experience there, so I jumped in on board. Like 2 days later, I was in the Dnipro at some like safe house, boarding and loading this ambulance, and we were just making these evac runs from Kherson, and we take people to like Odessa, take them to Dnipro, whatever, and we were just shuttling people in and out of the city. But it was nuts because at that point, like we were going down roads that hadn't been cleared of mines yet. It was like just a couple days after the liberation, so there was like Russians like quite often were targeting the city and like even our vehicle or whatever, were trying to target our vehicle with artillery. So it was like the first time I think I was able to actually really experience what the war was like firsthand.
Mhm.
Um, so just kind of building on that experience, I went back to Canada and then came back again in the spring of 2023, where I joined up in a medical battalion with the UDA as a combat medic. So
What's
that
UDA?
so that's the Volunteer Army of Ukraine. So it's
Mhm.
primarily Ukrainians, but it's all volunteer. So
Mhm.
they don't get paid, but they're quite motivated. From what I've seen, the units are treated well. So always a good experience working with Ukrainians, in my opinion. Much
Mhm.
better, truthfully, than working with Westerners, unfortunately.
Oh,
So
yeah, how so?
yeah, yeah. Like honestly, bro, it's just like since it's always been the same since the start of the war. A lot of Westerners have these like dreams of grandeur. Like for some reason, everybody thinks they're special forces or they're all going to like change the war somehow. They have these like crazy dreams, and very rarely do any of those things actually like come to fruition. In my opinion, it's like, a lot of the times people are like stuck in Kiev. They have these like crazy dreams, and I've seen people never leave Kiev. Or one like in one instance, I know like this one Western volunteer group or whatever that was training soldiers. The first time they were out in the Donbass, as soon as they heard artillery, their group leader like abandoned them out there in the middle of the night. I'm not even gonna say the name, but it was like there's always horror stories, man. And
Mhm.
with some personal bad runs myself. I just chose to only work with Ukrainians. They seem to be like quite motivated, right? They're there to help their country. They're trying to help their people. So they're not there to just like get fame or glory or get some likes on Instagram. Like they're actually there to make a difference. And for me, that's where I want to be as well because I share those same values. So
And how do you communicate with them?
man, so luckily, well, truthfully, with the medical battalion I'm in, most people at least understand a little English. I've always been able to somehow get paired with like a team that at least has one or two English speaking people. So, if I can't communicate with everybody, I can at least communicate with some people. They can translate for me. I know like a few basic words or whatever where I can kind of understand what some people are saying. There's language translator apps. So, yeah, like I've been able to make do.
And you spoke about training territorial defense forces. So, how would you explain how did your prior medical training prepare you for what you're facing now in Ukraine?
Yeah, so what I noticed specifically in Ukraine is a lot of medics are like kind of pumped through like 3-week programs or whatever. So not a lot of people come from like an actual medical background. And I'm a paramedic in Canada, and I'm not going to say like I'm amazing. like I'm not the best paramedic in the world, or I don't know everything medical related. But our education program is 2 years. It's pretty comprehensive. You learn a lot of life saving skills, a lot of patient care skills. And truthfully, like I've gone through like TCCC manuals, like tactical combat casualty care manuals, and I've seen like their education programs or whatever that they're teaching their soldiers. And truthfully, like all of that's easily incorporated into my previous education, just like studying as a paramedic. You learn a lot of that stuff and then tons more, right? So I was able to take that knowledge that I learned in Canada, and I was able to bring it over to Ukraine and kind of like teach their soldiers about how to apply tourniquets or how to pack wounds, use pressure dressings, like how to use spinal motion restriction for patients that have like neck injuries, that kind of thing. And from what I've noticed, that these people didn't have any like prior medical training anyways. So when I was teaching them this stuff, like they actually didn't know how to properly apply a tourniquet, or I would be teaching some of these guys and their tourniquets would be still in the wrapping. You know what I mean? And it's like if you
Mhm.
actually needed that in a in a life-threatening situation, you wouldn't even be able to unwrap the tourniquet and apply it. You'd like bleed out well before then, especially in a high stress situation where you have
Mm,
like a loss of like
mm.
what's the word, like tactile function or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like you won't be able to sit there and unwrap a brand new tourniquet just because you wanted to keep it like clean or whatever. Like so there's a lot of things that you can teach these guys that
Mm,
they just for whatever reason weren't aware of prior to me talking to them. And I hope that they were able to take some of that knowledge, pass it on to some of their guys, and maybe save some lives, or
absolutely. That's
prevented some unnecessary deaths. That's all you can hope for, right?
yeah, absolutely. And what was the biggest shock when you treated your first casualty in Ukraine?
Honestly, like, truthfully, it was just lack of, like, it was just differences in medical practice, I guess. And, we have a lot of standards and regulations that we follow in Canada. And I found that in Ukraine, there's like, a lot of people who are willing to learn, but some like, I've worked with some like older medics or whatever who just like, okay, this is just wild. A little story. So when I did medevac missions in Kherson, there was this one medic who was like a nurse, and she would like always just ride up front in the passenger seat of the ambulance, and like the patient would be in the back, like just completely like nobody's taking care, like nobody's monitoring vital signs, nobody's there with the patient in the back, and it's like, bro, oh, I've been a medic for like 20 years, nothing's ever happened, and or whatever. And it's like, oh, just because something's not happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. And that's what I've
Mm,
noticed. That kind of like mindset is really frustrating because I
mm,
noticed, in Canada, we always prepare for like the what if, like there is a possibility something could go wrong. So let's try to like minimize the risk, or at least like prepare some plan to react if something does go wrong. And sometimes I've noticed there, it's more like, oh, well, nothing's happened yet, so it'll never happen. And yeah, so that can be a little bit of a shock, a little frustrating.
mm,
But truthfully, a lot of like the time, I don't want to like bash their medics because they're like quite motivated people. They want to help. They take the little amount of training they have and they run with it. Like they really do try to study and improve their skills. So and they're like super brave, right? Like they're running
yeah,
into like frontline positions, or even just doing rescue work in cities where the Russians are known to like double tap strike first responders, like coming in to like assess the damage or rescue the wounded. So these people are brave. They work with minimal resources and not a lot of training, and they're really trying to do the best they can. So that's like actually quite respectable. Yeah.
yeah. And talking about this, based on what you've seen, do medical personnel appear to be specifically targeted in this war?
Yeah, 100%, man. So truthfully, most medics going out to the front line aren't typically wearing like identifiers that even show themselves as medics, just because like if a drone's seeing you or whatever, that you're a medical personnel, they'll target you first before even your standard soldier. So it's like pretty barbaric, and I truthfully don't understand it because in my opinion, it's like the first conventional war in my understanding where it's like medics are quite honestly targeted like immediately. And it sucks. Yeah. So that's pretty
Mm.
rough. And I've heard like rumors, like I can't verify these claims, but like I heard people say like, oh yeah, there's like bounties on medics' heads. So
Mm.
people saying that like, if Russians can confirm that they killed a medic, they'd get like X amount of money or whatever. So I don't know. You hear a lot of stuff, but truthfully, medics are targeted first. We're definitely a priority target.
Well, it's funny you bring up bounties because you told me some people tried to expose you on a special track Merc
Yeah, yeah,
Telegram
yeah.
page. So
And
what's that
if
about?
I'm if just to tie into that, I just watched the video of the guy who like runs the account getting like just absolutely demolished by some pro-Ukrainians in Russia. There's like a video of him getting like beat up or something. Quite funny. I don't know.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's floating around there. But yeah, so following my rotations to Avdiivka, I got posted on track on Merc or whatever. So they exposed like where I lived, my name, put a bunch of pictures in, made some like fake story or whatever, and just to get like a bunch of hate. But at this point, especially with a lot of volunteers in Ukraine, it's almost like a badge of honor to get like put onto this. It's just almost a running joke. Like this whole thing is it's a joke. Like I don't understand like the whole premise around it.
Because they said you were in the army, right? They said you were a
Well, yeah,
cadet in the
yeah, yeah.
army.
So they took pictures from when I was in cadets, and then they're saying, "Oh, yeah, like he was trained by the Royal Canadian Regiment or whatever." And it's like, no, that never happened. I was only in cadets. Never was in the army. Civilian came over to Ukraine. So, but truthfully, all they did was, I think, just find my Facebook, take as many pictures, and then just built a story off of what they could find on the
Mm.
on Facebook. But truthfully, like this page, I guess Czech Merc is known to like work pretty closely with like the Russians, obviously. They're pro-Russian Telegram channel. So it's safe to assume that I guess anybody who's posted on there also had their information exposed to the actual Russian government. So
Mm.
yeah, that's I guess your that kind of sucks, I guess, but whatever.
So
It
can
is
you
what it
tell us
is.
about the first time you treated a wounded Ukrainian soldier?
Yeah, sure. So first time I treated a wounded Ukrainian soldier, I like it was during a Shahid attack. We were hiding in some basement while the city was getting like pummeled, and we got a call that there was a casualty. We made it to the like house or whatever. Everybody's piled into this basement. There's like 40 people in here. Some Colombian dude has maybe a fractured leg or whatever, doesn't speak English, doesn't speak Ukrainian, so it's like impossible to communicate with this guy. It's probably like 2 a.m. at this point. There's drones flying everywhere. So it's like this is like what the this is the idea of like doing casualty evacuation off the front line. It's like messy, claustrophobic. You're always at risk, right? Like we're running around with lights on, like everybody's running around with flashlights. It's 2 a.m. and there's drones flying around. You know what I mean? They're obviously looking to target you. They have like Russians are pretty known to use like Zala thermal drones,
Mm.
whatever. So um yeah, it's like it's pretty risky, man. Like you're just trying to get in there, pick the patient up. You're doing any like life-saving treatments, and then you're just trying to evac them as quick as possible. If they're critical, you're going to be dropping them off, like kind of doing like a transfer of care to an ambulance crew, who will then provide like more life-saving treatment, and then can transport them to a hospital. Or depending on the situation, like you would just be driving them straight to like a stabilization point. In one case, it could be like a clinic. They're working out of a basement there or something. Or another case, it would be like this kind of makeshift medical bunker built like with sea containers underground. Like it's pretty nuts. Or, or if they're not critical, you could just be driving these people straight to the hospital yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Get a quick assessment, and then you're going back to back to your position. So I
What
mean, like, go ahead. Sorry.
when was this? So the first time you took care of this Colombian soldier?
Well, this was back in 2023. Honestly, when I first started working as a medic with my medical battalion.
Okay,
Prior
okay.
to that, I only worked with civilians at that point, like at a hair salon.
Oh, oh, okay. I see. I see.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
walk us through a typical casualty evacuation? What does it look like under fire, for example, or what are the different types of medevacs or kesevacs?
Yeah, sure. So truthfully, like you're not like there in the trenches typically with like the soldiers. Like you're
Mm.
not performing combat operations. Like you're a medical unit. You're in like the close rear or whatever. Like so you're not like right on the zero line. You're just behind it. And when there is a casualty, the wounded would be brought to like a pickup spot that we've designated on a map somewhere. So we'll meet up with like the soldiers typically, grab the wounded and then load them in the truck. We'll, like I said, so the operation would be either we're stationed at some like, okay, actually, do you know what? I'm just going to start off with just saying this. No one has like a strict plan of how you're going to conduct an operation. There's never like it's never like a set plan, or it's never like it's never like orderly or organized or well done. It feels like it's always chaotic. So it's like everything changes at a moment's notice. So for instance, like if we're stationed at some safe house, maybe we'll be waiting there. And if they and everybody's kind of connected through Starlink, if there is a casualty, they'll message, "Hey, we have a casualty here at this place." We'll go out there, find whatever the casualty is, assess them, treat them, and transport them. Or if it's like we're backing up, like a drone team or a artillery team that's going out to a position to work, maybe we'll go as close to like 3-4 kilometers from where they're working, and we'll just be kind of waiting there. If there is like a wounded, then we would be able to meet with them. On another rotation, the UDA guys wanted us to drive straight to their blindage if there was any wounded, so we'd be like working right out of their trench or whatever, in some cases. So it's always changing, and it's always situation dependent. Like the most noticeable difference I've seen though over the last few years is back in 2023, you could get like super close to the contact line. Like you could get, in some cases, I even remember, our driver pointed out like 400 meters like straight down this road or whatever are Russians, and this was like in Avdiivka. You could get super close, but nowadays you can't get like 4 kilometers to where Russian positions are without being like obliterated by drones. Essentially, they're everywhere. It's they like I've seen some report or Russia either imports or produces up to 100,000 drones every month, right? So even if like only a fraction of those has like a success rate, this is like an onslaught of drones. You know what I mean? Like like every pickup is almost a suicide mission, it feels like. So that's like the biggest change. So now we have to like designate these like pickup spots to like work with the actual guys on the ground to try to like minimize like risk to the medics, or whatever, because that's like at least with my unit, they're prioritizing our safety and trying to like avoid any unnecessary losses. But even like I know this one girl who I was out on a like a rotation with. The next one, she was with like a different unit. Their vehicle got hit by two FPV drones. Luckily, they were like smaller. They had an armored vehicle, so like there was no injuries. But I mean, like it's so frequent. Drone attacks are so frequent. It's like even in my unit, which has like a relatively small amount of people, every few weeks you're hearing about like super close call, vehicles destroyed, whatever. Somebody got targeted by drones. They're like vehicles destroyed. Like it's just such a common occurrence. And yeah, and it makes like working and doing casualty evacuations near impossible, truthfully. So that can result in like a lot of guys, staying and wounded and not being picked up, and they could wait for hours or days because just trying to extract them is nearly impossible and almost a guaranteed suicide mission.
And how do you protect against drones?
We have a few options, but there's nothing that can 100% protect you. So we have something called a REB. It's like a signal jammer, some electronic warfare device that we've mounted in our vehicles, and you flick it on, and it's like so those DJI drones or whatever that control that are controlled by radio frequency, so it can jam that signal, cut the video feed to the controller like the operator on the controller, so they can't see where they're going. The drone would fly erratically. It's going to hopefully not hit your vehicle, and they can work on a relatively decent distance. So you're if you do have a good working reb, you're mostly safe-ish from these radio controlled drones or whatever. But the Russians also use fiber optic drones, which is essentially like a spool with the fiber optic cable. It's attached to the drone and it's connected right to the operator's controller. So you can't jam it. You can't there's no defense against this type of drone. So if the Russians are using that, there's nothing that can actually protect you. We have another device, there's drone detectors. It can intercept the video feed that the drone transmits to the Russians, so you can see what the Russians are seeing from their drone. This is the drone detector. Turn this device on. Green means it's active. This monitor picks up the intercepted video feed. And on the bottom here, it shows you your frequency. And if these buttons light up, it means that it's detected one of the above. So DJI or FPV are the ones you want to look out for. The more the lights that light up here means the stronger the signal is.
FPV's back on the monitor.
I don't know. This doesn't really necessarily help you. It just almost gives you a kill cam. You know what I mean? It's not even
I was
it's
gonna
just
say, I was
oh
like, how do you
shit.
feel about the fact that you see yourself in their camera?
Yeah, and you can't do much to you can't run from the drone. If you would see your vehicle or whatever in the frame of this drone detector, there's not much you can do to hide. So it really it's it can be a useful piece of technology, but it's also an anxiety booster for sure.
Yeah, you also showed me that you have some detector of all the drones in the area, like a map that's
Yeah, so Ukrainians use some type of software where they can kind of communicate, units can communicate with each other. They can spot, or they would map out in live time cab launches. So those would be your FAB glide bombs. They can put Shaheeds up on the map. Russian fighter jets. You see kind of where Russian positions are, the real time status of the front line, and the Ukrainians are able to use this software to communicate basically along the entire front line. So there's it's quite intelligent and advanced, this system, and the Russians have nothing even close to it. So in that aspect, the Ukrainians are winning with their innovation, I guess. Yeah,
Mhm.
because their software that they have to be able to communicate and conduct operations is quite advanced. It's pretty impressive, even for a Western army. This would be, maybe only the U.S. or maybe France or something has any competitions to what the Ukrainians are using.
So when you're out on a casualty evacuation mission, so your first protection is the vehicle, then you say you have the signal jammer. Do you have a
Yeah.
shotgun maybe as a last
Yeah,
resort?
so I mean, a lot of times where I was out, there would be a guy with a shotgun usually, but truthfully, if we're armed, it's with an AK or something, and it's not going to do anything to stop against a drone. Truthfully, trying to hit a drone with an AK is quite inefficient, if you were to ask me. I think shotguns would be a good standard, truthfully, for medical missions, because you're hopefully not ever going to be in actual combat with the enemy. You know what I mean? If you're armed, it's strictly for self-defense. You're not conducting combat operations. So I mean, I guess your best weapon would be a drone to defend yourself, or sorry, a shotgun to defend yourself against drones.
So can you tell us more about the, let's say, the standard gear that you wear when you're out on the front? So everything,
Yeah.
and I also saw in some of your photos and pictures on Instagram that you're actually carrying a weapon.
Yeah.
So can you
So
explain why a combat medic might be armed?
Well, it's like I said, strictly for self-defense. Like you're not conducting combat operations, you're not taking part in combat operations, but you are a medic. And in certain situations, luckily, like I've never had to encounter this. I've never personally like fired my weapon or used it in any way. You know, I've strictly always just worked as a medic, only really helped people, luckily. So that's very nice. But you know, there's a lot of Russian special forces that can like slip behind your lines, you know, conduct operations behind Ukrainian lines, or Russians will use sabotage groups. You have drones now. So there's a lot of things that are still life threatening to medics that are operating close to the front line. Um, so I mean, like, truthfully, I don't even know if being armed is quite useful, because like if you're ever to like be in a situation where you're like caught in a fight with like Russian special forces or whatever, like, you know, you're probably not winning. Like I'm not a I have some rifle training, but I'm not a soldier. Like I would never want to be in a position where I'm like fighting, you know what I mean, or actually like using my weapon, because if that's the case, things went wrong quite badly.
And can you tell us about the standard gear that you wear when you're out there?
Yeah, so I have a like my plate carrier. It's kind of like a corset style. So it has like all the soft armor on the back. It's basically the point I'm trying to get at is your best asset for protecting yourself out on the front line is just get as much soft armor as possible. So I have shoulder padding, you know, like I have a soft armor belt, abdominal armor, groin armor, like lower back armor. Even the plate carrier I have protects your neck. You're just trying to really cover as many critical areas as possible, because as a medic, your biggest risk out there is shrapnel from drones. Like you're not coming in contact with like the actual enemy, or you're not coming in contact with Russian forces. You're
Mhm.
trying to like do casualty evacuations while getting harassed by these tiny little drones. That's your biggest risk out there right now. And it's but these little drones can cause a ton of damage, a ton of tiny little pieces of shrapnel, which would get caught in these soft armor pieces. But it's not like standard practice. So you would see like a lot of people just running with just a plate carrier and a fast helmet, and that's how like a lot of casualties happen, right? Like just a tiny piece of shrapnel can hit somebody in the neck or whatever, and that would incapacitate them. Whereas, you know, if they had some soft armor, it would be protected.
And how much does so much armor cost? Like, do you pay for it for yourself?
Yeah, so not a lot of stuff like that is issued to you. Luckily, I was able to get a pretty good helmet issued by my battalion, but you know, their standard issue gear is, like I said, just a plate carrier. So it's not like known practice to put on all of this armor, but it's smart. So I went to a Ukrainian military store called it's literally called Militarist, and it's this brand called MTAC. It's pretty well known in Ukraine. So, you know, I probably spent like maybe around 2000 Canadian, something like that. And it's like a sizable amount of money, but truthfully, for how valuable your life is,
Of
and
course.
if you have the cash to spend on it, like it's much more important to protect your life. You know, and this stuff will last for forever, pretty much. So, well,
Yeah,
for
totally.
for like a few, like at least I think like the life expectancy of this armor, or at least it's guaranteed for like 6 to 8 years or something. So,
Mm.
I mean, you buy it once, and as long as you don't like have to use it, or it doesn't get like actually used, it'll last forever. You know, for your duration of your work, I guess.
In our private messages, you were saying that while I was making videos of the Battle of Avdiivka, you were watching my videos and you were living the battle live. So, can you tell us more about this moment?
Yeah, so that was a few years ago when I was watching your stuff. We were working out of Avdiivka at that point, but we were living in a safe house that was just a couple kilometers outside of the city. This little village was just hammered constantly with like grad rockets, artillery. That was like, you know, you'd get like yeah, back then it was literally just grad rockets and artillery. That was your biggest threat, truthfully. And we'd get hammered by this. And we always had Starlink out on the front lines. Like since I've been volunteering in Ukraine, I've always had internet connection on the front lines. And like you know, OPSEC is important. Like, you want to maintain operational security. You're not trying to like expose your position or whatever. But like, it's wild, bro. Like, everybody's using Instagram out there. Like, everybody's calling back home. Like, whatever. Like, it's almost like it's just so frequent that people are like using like social media out there that you're not. It's like finding a needle in the haystack to even like look for you, because you're just like another one of like
Like,
thousands of people on social media using Starlink or whatever. So
mhm.
so while I was out there, I was watching your videos. Um, we would always be like hammered with artillery, quite close to where Russians were, and I was watching your analysis of this situation. You know, that was back when we first started losing the city, so a lot of people were like, "Oh, the counterattack's coming," but you know, I could see through it a little bit, seeing that there was quite a bit of an issue going on there, and yeah, it turned out we lost the city after a while, so that sucks.
Yeah, yeah. And you said you started watching the channel since the early days. Huh? That was
Yeah, yeah,
funny.
man.
I can't.
Yeah,
For me, it's always weird to meet or even hear about people on the front line watching my videos.
yeah. No, it's honestly, it felt a little surreal because when I first started watching you, it was before I think I even went to Ukraine to begin with. So I was really just like watching these videos. You at the time, and you still are, truthfully, really like the most engaging, I feel like, person making these like types of videos. You know, like, you have a lot of humor. So it's something
Thank
that
you.
I could like throw on and just listen to while I'm doing something else, especially while like the war first started. So, you know, I was watching your videos just for info, and then you know, like, a year later, I'm actually like in the spot where you're talking about this. So I felt I had like a bit more knowledge of what you were saying. I think maybe that's around the time where I started to realize like, oh, this guy's actually like just being real. Cause like a lot of the stuff you were talking about, you know, I was seeing it, and when I would see people that were like quite critiquing like your points or whatever, it was like at that point where I'm like, okay, you know, that's like the fine line between, you know, maybe some propaganda versus like what's actually happening on the
Mm,
ground.
mhm.
And it was interesting to be able to like see that, I guess, first person.
Yeah, very.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
nice. And at one point, you said that you. There's this story you told me that I thought was interesting. You said the boys in your group said you. That's the day you became a man, April
Oh yeah.
2023. What happened that day?
So that day we were just getting like hammered with artillery in the morning, and then it kind of like calmed down, and all of a sudden there's just a wall of machine gun fire. You know, everybody like so there's like this massive it sounded like an exchange of machine gun fire that was like relatively close by. You know, everybody's like kind of tripping out, thinking that like it's you know, we're under attack at that point. And I think we were, luckily nobody ever was able to like actually like enter our village or whatever at that point. But it was like quite an intense situation. You know, I have a video, I think, of like when the
Yeah.
machine gun fire first started. You know, I'm trying, bro, we gotta leave, man. Like, we gotta get out of here. Like, I'm like maybe a little panicked. It was the first time I ever heard machine gun fire. You know, there was like close artillery. We were under like a grad rocket barrage at that point.
We need to get out of here, man.
And do anything by yourself.
And don't miss me now.
Go inside and fucking do nothing.
I don't want to get captured, man.
Oh, good. Listen what we say. Do only what I say. Go inside.
We need to leave.
Yeah. Listen what we say. Тебя уебать, блядь, или что?
So it was getting pretty hairy, and yeah, you know, I panicked a bit. It was my first time ever at that point experiencing like war, I guess, firsthand. And after that day ended, my boys were like, you know, today's the day you became a man. And yeah, I just thought that was hilarious, man.
Where was it?
So that was out in Avdiivka. That was back in
Oh,
2023.
okay. You
So
were in
yeah,
Avdiivka and very early on, before the
yeah, yeah,
big
yeah.
battle started. Okay.
No, no, no. So no, the battle was raging then. It just didn't get the traction like it didn't get the newsworthy traction until maybe a few months later.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it
October.
really picked up. Like, yeah, well, I think started seeing a ton of news about it in January of 2024. That's like
Yeah.
when people started like going crazy about it. But the battle was raging
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
insanely. It was an insanely big battle. I think, you know, it was overshadowed by Bakhmut. That's why
Mhm.
not a lot of people were talking about Avdiivka at that point. And then when Bakhmut fell, that's when people started to like look to Avdiivka, I think, a bit more, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
actually, Avdiivka is technically since 2014, but
yeah. But it was like a fortress city, I think,
yeah, exactly,
for so
exactly.
long. Yeah,
But
yeah,
one thing you did mention to me was that when you were in that basement, I don't know how many people were there in that basement, but how did you feel like knowing that Russian soldiers could breach in at any moment?
yeah. So I think that point in my life where you know, I thought in my head, like I thought, you know, what if the Russians actually like get in here? You know, I can't ever be captured. Like that was my like that was actually what was going through my mind. I think the most was that I don't want to ever be like taken prisoner. I think like I don't know, you know, you're just drilled with all of these horror stories. You see all these videos of like how the Russians are treating not only their prisoners of war, but like Westerners who get captured by the Russians are treated quite poorly. And you know, it's I think everybody's biggest fear would be to be like captured by them. So you know, going through my head was like, I need to get out of here. Especially because that was like the first time I ever was in a situation like that. So it was a life-changing moment for sure. And I would say that like since that moment, I've become a lot more like calm working out in like hostile environments. Like I feel, you know, I have my nerves about me quite a bit more. Like I'm not so panicked anymore. I've seen quite a lot of stuff like on the front line or whatever. So it's like you know, since then I'm not so panicked. But at that point back in 2023, that was like one of the scariest moments of my life, like easily.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the video. We can feel it. How do you cope with stress and anxiety doing your job?
Man, honestly, dude, I smoke like a chimney. Like, truthfully, like it's you know, I vape a lot, whatever. If I'm in Ukraine, I'm smoking cigarettes quite often. It's bad. Like, it's not. You know, I wouldn't say like I'm a alcoholic or like I'm drug addict or whatever, but you know, I would say even my coping habits or mechanisms with the stress isn't great.
Welcome to Ukraine.
You end up carrying a lot of stuff with you, right? Like you end up taking a lot of baggage with you. It's hard to like kind of re-assimilate into normal life when you've done like an experience something so intense and your body's like constantly in this like fight or flight mode, and then you're back into like normal life, you know, come back to Canada and it's like this peaceful, quiet, boring life again. You know, it's hard to adjust, I guess. So yeah, like it's I think I'm doing okay. You know, I feel like I'm coping all right, but truthfully, it is difficult. Like you have to do a lot of like soul searching. You know, I like to just kind of chill in nature, whatever, walk, like just you know, do relaxing things. But at the end of the day, it's like there's not much that can like really like just calm you down. Like it's just something that you have to work through yourself. Like it's different for everybody, I guess. Like I don't
Yeah, I
know.
totally
Everybody has bad habits, bad vices, you know, to deal with this kind of stuff. I don't know anybody truthfully who's like gone to like war or whatever, or even like being a paramedic. Like very rarely do I notice people going through like super stressful thing, like going through like super stressful periods of their life and having like perfectly healthy coping mechanisms. Like everybody has some type of bad vice that I've
Mm,
noticed. Yeah,
mm,
for me it's like I smoke like a chimney, you know what I mean? And like
mhm.
I would say that's probably like my biggest like bad vice, but you know, it is what it is. It
Yeah,
helps.
yeah, yeah. It is what it is, like you said.
Yeah.
So now we're in spring of 2023, okay? And you felt the general feeling, the general sentiment prior to Ukraine's much anticipated summer offensive. What was it like?
Yeah. Well, truthfully, I'm gonna be honest. Around that time, they posted the video of their like trailer prior to the start of the offensive. So I was like, bro, like and I don't want to sit here and say like I'm bashing the Ukrainian army. Like these guys are honestly just working so hard. They're understaffed, under-equipped, and facing a much larger enemy. And they're like brave people. Like they're fighting with everything that they have. If you actually talk to the Ukrainians on the ground, they're amazing people. They're honestly like I've met so many good people just trying to do the right thing or whatever. Um, so the Ukrainians are always doing like the best with what they have. Okay, so the hype to it was a bit of a mixed feeling situation because actually at that point I think Ukraine was still making massive gains and like liberating tons of territory at that point. They still had a ton of momentum. I think there was a lot of like they had all this new equipment. I think at that point they were getting like the
Mm,
Leopards, the maybe like M1 Abrams were coming in, like they were getting Bradleys, all this like cool Western tech. I think at that point you had a ton of like Western trained units that were coming in. So I don't think they had seen like action at that point, but this was like much anticipated. Like everybody was waiting to see how well like the British trained units were going to do and all of this Western equipment. So I think everybody was excited. And at that point, you know, I was in Avdiivka, like Donetsk was what, like a 10-15 minute drive away. So it's not like when I was actually there on the ground, from what I could see, it's not a long drive from where we were to where the Ukrainians wanted to get to. So in my opinion, I felt like it was doable. I just don't understand this is the flip side where it was like felt like a double-edged sword. I think Ukraine put so much emphasis on wanting to take back Donetsk that like they basically just told the Russians exactly what they were going to do. Like they posted this trailer prior to the counteroffensive. I felt that the Russians probably had months to prepare for this anticipated counteroffensive. Like it wasn't a secret by any means. So when they conducted the counteroffensive, like of course it didn't like achieve the results everybody expected because I feel like it was like saying, "Hey, we're going to attack here, here, and here. Here's a trailer. Like, hopefully this goes well." And then the Russians obviously were going to defend those positions, which they did, and like the Ukrainians didn't have a lot of territory gained from that, so they lost a ton of resources. It was a massive morale hit. I think that point is where things started going wrong in the war.
how did the
But,
soldiers around you and the people around you react to the situation?
you know, I think the idea was a lot of frustration. Like, I remember being on the ground and you didn't even know who was next to you, bro. So we'd be at a safe house. I had no idea who was living in the house next to me. It was like some random soldier. Like bro, like there was no communication between units, it felt like everybody felt like isolated. So you
Mm,
never really knew what was going on. You never knew what was really fully happening. So there was just a lot of confusion. And if for whatever reason, and like, you know, I think as I'm older, as I'm more experienced, you just kind of understand that the front line's like fluid. It's not like static. It's not like you can't just draw a line on the map and be like, oh, this is where the front line is. Like it's
mm,
constantly shifting. Like that's like the gray zone, right? It's constantly shifting. But you know,
mhm,
back then, I think people were just starting to realize that it was like, you know, you'd have Russians making these like wild advances somehow, like not wild, like, you know, but they would cut through the front lines and it would be like, how the hell did that happen? Um, you know, what's going on. It felt like there was like I don't know, I just remember being on the ground before the offensive happened and realizing there was some things to be concerned about, you know what I mean? And I was maybe skeptical on how effective the counteroffensive is going to be. I think the Ukrainians kind of like missed the ball on that one because obviously like a couple years later or about a year later when they conducted the Kursk offensive, they were able to like surprise the Russians, right? Like they actually
mhm,
gained like a good swath of land before the Russians even knew what was going on. They held that territory for months. So like the Ukrainians showed that they were able to conduct these types of operations and be effective at it. But I just don't know how they like missed the ball so hard on that. Like like famous summer counteroffensive of
Mhm.
2023. Like I don't know what went wrong, and I think it was a shock to everybody. And just like referring to even recently when the 2,000 meters to Avdiivka, like you could see that a lot in the people
Mm.
being interviewed there as well. It was just like in my opinion, I think everybody wanted this offensive to work out, but there was concerns of like how it was being operated and how it was being conducted, and obviously, and ended up biting the Ukrainian high command in the ass. I think at the end of the day.
Although you were not where the bulk of the fighting was taking place at that moment, did you feel that there were more casualties coming in at that moment?
I think yeah. I think I think yes, if I remember right. Because honestly, what I can at least say is now while I was in Ukraine, casualties are like down substantially. So the amount of casualties that you were just witnessing back in 2023, back when the Russians were trying to take back Mu, Avdiivka was still a big fight. The counteroffensive was ongoing. And you had both sides that were still trying to adjust to the war. Like at that point, the war had only been going on for 1 year. A lot of mistakes were being made. People were ironing out, like figuring out what works for them, what doesn't. So you had a lot of like things shifting. And that just inevitably would result in a lot more casualties, because when people don't really know what's going on, that's when a lot of mistakes get made. You know what I mean? And when people are trying new things, that's when a lot of mistakes are made. So back then, and at the same time, I felt like people were a bit more like frugal, like they were able to like or maybe that's not the right word, like people were more like able to commit resources to a task. So maybe
Mm,
like
yeah, okay.
maybe like casualties weren't like a big thing to worry about back then, I guess. And
Mm,
it felt like there was a lot of casualties happening, whereas now I feel like there's this like massive priority on wanting to like keep, like Ukrainians want to keep their soldiers safe, at least from what I've noticed. Like a
mhm,
lot more units are like trying to prioritize the safety of their soldiers.
mhm, mhm,
So that's resulting in like less risky operations, and then obviously less casualties are happening now. So definitely, I think casualties were like peaking around then, and comparing that to like 2025 and 2026, I think like there's substantially less casualties, and a lot more priority on safety, and less risk taking.
mm. Very interesting. So, as a combat medic, what are the most common types of injuries you had to deal with?
Honestly, like shrapnel injuries are probably like your biggest threat there. But I noticed that there's a lot of injuries that just happen uh, from like, debris falling on people, people
Mhm,
like just like mechanical lifting injuries. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like people injuring themselves, like not by actually like getting hit by like artillery or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of minor casualties. And from what I noticed, and this is something that like I was plagued as, as a paramedic, you deal with a lot of like lower acuity types of calls, and I noticed that
mm,
even in Ukraine, working with Ukrainian volunteers, Ukrainian medics, we're still plagued with a lot of low acuity calls. Like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just surprising. Like we'll work in the city or whatever, the whole time that we're stationed in, we'll get just absolutely obliterated all night. Like 20 shaheeds, like 15 FAB glide bombs will get dropped. And it'll be like literally like somebody had debris fall on their leg, and that's like, and like a house would get blown up, but the house was abandoned for 6 months. You know what I mean? It was like, it was almost like a divine intervention, it felt like, where
mm,
there'd be so much destruction, but like the end result was like such a minor casualty. And I found that that would happen like so frequently. At least I don't know if I was just like lucky or whatever, but wherever I was stationed, like very rarely would you ever actually have a like a severe casualty to work with. Especially like more specifically on my last rotation into Ukraine, from September to December or whatever. I found that like our casualties were way less severe, and there was yeah, like way more priority on like soldier safety, I think. So people taking less risks, like where I was kind of talking about this software or whatever. So, there'd be somebody working and seeing like, oh, there's a FAB glide bomb that was just launched. Shahid's in the air. Okay, so now everybody gets word of this, and now everybody's in a basement hiding. So obviously, when that like
Mm.
Shahid hits,
Mhm.
the chance of it actually like harming somebody is really low. You know what I mean? So it's like that was like what we were dealing with a lot. Even when you were like supporting the drone team that was working out of their blindage, like they were still able to hide, like they were able to mask themselves well enough that the Russians had no idea they were there. If there was a drone up in the air, or a cab that was being launched, or a Shahid that was inbound, you could like hide, kind of stay out of the way, wait for it to do its thing, and then come out. Like you were just like hiding like a rat a little bit, but it was keeping people safe. Like and I feel like that's where the Ukrainian forces have kind of like adjusted. And then I think that ties into like, the news that we're seeing where Ukraine's building their like tunnels or whatever, to try to like transport their troops back and forth, versus like out in the open air. Like
Oh.
Ukraine's really prioritizing like trying to keep their soldiers safe. So they'll use like these systems to let everybody know that there's a threat in the air. Stay hidden.
Mhm.
Okay, it's all clear. You can come out now. You can do whatever you're doing now. You know what I mean?
Okay, so when there are FAB bombs coming, you have a warning before. Like it's not in.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I see.
Yeah, yeah, and it's always like we've always had like a 5 to 10 minute warning usually. Like and
Oh.
I would say like the most danger I was under was when I was out visiting like family close to the front line or whatever. It was like that you have no warning, but when you're working with like the military, it's like every time that there's a cab launch, you would be able to know that, okay, yeah, cabs are incoming, let's get to the basement. Sometimes the basement was like super sketch or whatever, but the fact that you had this heads up, that's saving lives, like for sure. 2023, you never had this type of
Mm.
system set up. Like it was much more Wild West, which in one case it made it like, the way like it was like I was kind of fun, like honestly back in 2023, where it was like the Wild West, you know what I mean? And now there's a ton of bureaucracy surrounding the war, a lot more like order involved, and that's it's a good thing at the end of the day. Like there's a lot of lives being saved now. Ukraine seems to be prioritizing defense over anything else, and yeah, Russians are gaining some territory, but they're not gaining like massive strategic areas right now, and they're at least slowing the tide. Ukraine needs to make some adjustments, I think, but I think they're at least going into the right direction. Like, I don't know what else you can do when you're such a small country facing such a large adversary.
Okay, so you never actually had to deal with gunfire wounds, something like this, or machine gun mortar wounds. It was more like, from what I
Yeah,
understand, it's drones, FAB, maybe artillery.
like shrapnel wounds. You're dealing with like mechanical injuries from like debris falling on people. Musculoskeletal wounds, that kind of thing. I've personally never dealt with like a gunshot wound while I've been working out in Ukraine, but that doesn't say like that's not to say that it just doesn't happen. It's just
Mhm.
like for whatever it is, the luck of the draw. Like I've just never been in that position to encounter a patient with that type of injury or whatever. If I'm working, but it's mostly because of like the jobs that I decide to volunteer for. Like I'm usually out there supporting a specific unit. So we're like reinforcing like a drone team or an artillery team. So we're
Mm.
attached to that team, and we're prioritizing care for that team. So obviously if we're
Oh, I
if
see, I
we're
see.
if we're at like a safe house, and obviously like there's a cab strike, and there's like for instance the Colombian soldier that we picked up, he wasn't a part of our unit or anything, that was just a
Mm.
casualty, and we were close by to be able to assist with that. But that's not like we're not doing that all the time. Like we're supporting
Okay.
our team, and luckily like the unit commanders we've always had prioritize the safety of the UDA guys. So it just luck of the draw, there's just never any severe wounded with our unit. So we have always got lucky, I guess. If I was working in like a stabilization point, that's where you're gonna have like a
Mhm.
ton of wounded come in who are like suffering critical injuries. But you can't even say that that's like, I wouldn't even be able to say that's like my patient, because you have doctors there, nurses on hand. So if I'm working at a stabilization point, like I would just be an extra set of hands helping out
Mhm.
like a doctor or something. So yeah, I don't even think that would be fair to say it's like my patient. Like, yeah, I've definitely done some more like critical stuff and assisted, but like my own personal patients have somehow just always have mostly been moderately wounded people.
How many pickup runs do you think you've done in Ukraine overall?
Like, honestly, it's hard to count. Quite a few. It's I found it would be like very sporadic. Like the biggest time where I was doing the most amount of evacuations, honestly, was out of Kherson. We were running like nonstop because I think everybody back then thought the Russians were gonna like retake the city really quickly or
Yeah.
whatever. Like everybody was expecting like some counterattack, and there was a ton of people who needed to get out. A lot of people who were living under occupation who weren't getting like proper medical care, who had wounds that were being left untreated. It was a humanitarian crisis, truthfully, at the start of that liberation. So everybody was rushing in to get people out of there. So we would be like, we would run in and we would do evac runs, like literally work almost 24 hours straight. Like I remember the one time we were in and out of Kherson, we were dropping people off in Odessa, and then our last run, we picked up a bunch of people to drop off in Dnipro, and then some like lady was getting transferred to like a hospital in Kiev. And I remember that night we literally slept 1 hour. Like I slept on the floor of the ambulance for an hour, and then we got back up and just kept driving. Like it was so it was just nonstop, and you were so exhausted, but you just kind of had this energy because, every extra
Mhm.
patient you could evacuate was maybe one more life saved or whatever. And at that point, no one knew when the Russians were coming back. So it was like, let's try to get people out of here as soon as possible before anything actually happens.
Do you have you ever been wounded at the front, or did you ever have a really close call, let's say, by from a drone?
Like kind of, we had like somewhat close calls with drones, but I've never been wounded, truthfully. And I don't want to like knock on wood and not jinx
Yeah, yeah,
myself,
yeah.
but yeah, no, I've done 4 trips to Ukraine since 2022, and I've stayed a few months at a time for each one, and luckily, like had some close calls, but never actually was wounded. And yeah, like I would say the closest calls were from like grad rockets back in 2023, or drones now are just a crazy risk. Like even on my last rotation to the front line, our safe house was in a farmer's field. Like it was just like a farmhouse or whatever. There was like flat ground surrounding us in all directions. And the Russians would use this like field to transit their drones to the main road where the Ukrainians were like supplying the front line. So
Mm.
like we're living in this house, there's no running water, toilets outside, you have to go out to take a piss, and you're like, you open the door and you just hear like, in like drones, I swear
Oh,
yeah, dude, and drones are like 15 feet, right? Like they're just skimming like right above the roof, like you could like straight up just like look outside and see the mavic
oh
drones flying.
no.
Yeah, dude. And or it was like, I literally remember, bro, and like remember we had this drone detector chilling. So like had the videos or whatever. Bro, I'm literally in the bathroom and I can just hear my team leader like, I'm like, Alex, get inside, get inside. Like like you can just like
Oh,
hear the, and I'm like peering out of this like outhouse watching the drone
oh
just fly over, and
no.
I'm like, oh my god, please not now, man. Like this would be the worst moment ever to
Oh
die.
no.
Yeah, so it was like some of those like, oh god, like this is close. Yeah, luckily, even the safe house, like 3 houses down, there's a cab strike just like vaporized one of the buildings. So I mean, like you were constantly at risk. Like you didn't feel safe anywhere. It was it's nuts, dude. Like I don't even know how to explain the feeling. Like you're just constantly at risk. You don't feel safe anymore. Even bro, you could be
Mm.
like 20 kilometers from the Russian, like from like the contact line, and there's still drones buzzing around somehow. Like
Oh
it's
man.
insane. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's actually nuts nowadays.
Yeah, by the way, in our private messages, during your last rotation, you mentioned that the gray zone has become much larger than it used to be.
Yeah.
So how does that affect medical evacuations?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's nearly impossible. Like you're constantly like like the the UDA guys for us, but I'm sure it's like this for other units. They want you to come like right to their position, pick up wounded, but like their positions, it's like nearly suicide because they're constantly getting buzzed by like recon drones, attack drones, whatever, like FPV, like kamikaze drones. So it's like if you not even just the drones. We had a Land Rover Defender. The road to get to their blindage, it was like part of the road was basically through like a farmer's field. It was in the middle of their like mud season or whatever. So this road's like basically washed out. Like you can't even get the vehicle through it. We tried once. We weren't even like close to their blindage. It was just like kind of like somewhat close. And the road that we were on, we almost got this Defender stuck, and like the drone detector's buzzing with drones. We see drones like in the same field as us. It's like, okay, let's get the hell out of here. So it's so dangerous, especially when you're working like in this mud season on sketchy roads, sometimes in the middle of the night. You mentioned it before, like our first reliance is on the vehicle that we're using, so
Mhm.
like you need to make sure it's mechanically sound, not going to break down on you, but hopefully also will protect you at least somewhat against drones. The Defender, maybe if it's like a smaller drone, at least from what I have heard, the person whose vehicle got hit with a couple of these drones, they were actually fine, and the vehicle was even drivable still.
Mm.
But like if you have an FPV drone with an RPG warhead, it's gonna just destroy like a Land Rover Defender. So even like some armored vehicles aren't like perfect. It just kind of gives you a little bit of safety, but there's so much weight added to these vehicles that if you're trying to go down a dirt road, like good luck. There's a good chance you're going to get stuck. Now, what if it's at night? What if you do get hit with a drone? You've lost now. You don't have Starlink. You don't have lights. It's in the middle of the night. You don't even know where you are. You know what I mean? It's like, so if you lose that vehicle when you're trying to conduct an evac, it's like you're screwed.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. And like the Russians have thermal drones, bro. Like it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the odds are stacked against you. Like it's really difficult, man. I'm not
Are
gonna
you
lie.
are you
Like
equipped with capes like these anti-thermal capes?
I don't think they even work well, truthfully. Like I get the idea. I don't so no, we're not equipped with these capes. And I don't know how like I need to work with my hands. You need to be able to move fast. So in our work it's not like really beneficial, but at least maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or if this gets like posted, if somebody like comments it, but I think these thermal capes are just like they only work for a few minutes. Like as
Mhm.
soon as your body heat warms up the cape, which is inevitable, you just are like now a big blob anyways. So you're gonna show up on thermal cameras. It's very hard to actually hide from these guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, like truthfully, I don't think these are very effective at all. I think there was like that whole video of these like penguin looking Russian soldiers or whatever. Like I just seen it floating around Instagram. It was like the Russians were trying to sell those anti-thermal radiation capes or whatever. They don't work, you know what I mean? It's like a
Mm.
gimmick. So I don't know. Even if you get like a one that actually works, it only works for, in my opinion, I think only works for a short amount of time, and then your body
Mhm.
heat warms it up anyways, and it's useless.
Mhm. Okay, very
Yeah.
interesting. So nowadays it's very difficult for you and your team to get protected against drones. So if you're seen, it's over, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And like that's the thing. Like if let's say our vehicle gets hit and we're in the middle of a field, they'll just send another drone, and now you're just in the middle of a field without a vehicle. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like you really just don't want to get caught by a drone. Like that's like a whole lot of planning. That's why like we all try to you have as much protection equipment as possible. Luckily our unit is like prioritizes our safety. So all of our vehicles have these revs. So if you do detect a drone, you turn it on. Hopefully, jams the
Mhm.
drone. We're not doing unnecessary calls. Like I said, everything's about prioritizing safety. So instead of driving maybe right to their blindage, okay, like yeah, it's quite dangerous. Let's look and see if we can find a pickup spot that works for both of us, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
there's a lot of work that goes into trying to like keep our guys safe.
Do you want to tell us more about your last rotation where you were deployed? Briefly, you don't have to go into details, and how you saw the front move in this direction. So we talked about my reports
Yeah.
and how you saw it from up front.
You can post this video of like the front line moving in deep state while I vape, you know? No, so back then when I was on my last rotation, actually like on both of my rotations, the front line was rapidly shifting. And the both places where I was stationed at, you know, we started relatively further away from the gray zone, and by the end of our rotation, we ended up being relatively close to the gray zone. Like the Russians were actually rapidly moving forward. And you have mentioned these places before, you know, ones in like, like done. I'm just trying to think of how I can say this. Like,
I mean, you can say it now. You're not there anymore, right?
yeah, whatever. It's not even a big deal. So yeah, we were in the Pokrovsky area and near the Huliaipole area. You know, so I wasn't like I wasn't stationed right in Huliaipole, but I was close enough to see what was going on. And the front line was shifting rapidly. Deep state map wasn't updating very quickly. So the gray zone was typically much bigger than what like you were even being shown. And the Russians were actually moving quite rapidly in that area.
Плюс-мінус є.
Угу.
Бо о, це
Скільки часу пройшло?
From what I could see, at least, or from what I know, I think the reason being is the Russians were able to expose like weaker territorial defense units in that area and able to bypass some of the longer standing fortresses that had like that were occupied by more elite units. So the Russians were able to exploit a weakness. It seemed that the Ukrainians were lagging to get men to fill the gap because there was manpower shortages. So yeah, we ended up naturally going there to support, like, because there's a lot of volunteer units moving into that area. So naturally, we ended up going there to support the volunteer army. And yeah, each day that we were there, you could feel that the front line was shifting. Like especially in the Prikhorovsky area, you know, we started the rotation and there were still like shops and stuff that you could buy food from in the village. And you know, like the Russians ended up bombing the Atibe, which is basically like the supermarket type, like a chain or whatever, but it's like a nice supermarket, like what you would see in like a Western country. And yeah, they ended up just bombing this store. It was just in flames the day we left, or like the day after we left the town. They ended up like bombing the city, like the town center in broad daylight while it was like fully occupied by civilians. So even like some of the places we grabbed coffee at or whatever, just gone, you know what I mean? Like, so at the start of this rotation, it was like quite a peaceful area where like our safe house was. And then at the end of it, it was like nothing was left. It felt like there was this town completely changed. So it was wild to see, I guess. And you know, every single night the Russians were like indiscriminately targeting this town with cabs and Shahed drones. Civilians were always paying the largest price for this. So that was sad to see.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And from your
One thing.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but an interesting thing. So I ended up finding like a pro-Russian video or something showing a fiber optic drone striking like a Ukrainian military truck. But in the corner of this video, they posted like a FAB strike on this bridge. And it was like a pretty everybody I think used this bridge, so you know whatever, they destroyed this bridge. But the Russians made it look like, you know, oh, one strike, they destroyed the bridge. But like they spent 3 straight weeks trying to destroy this tiny
Mhm.
little bridge, man. And we were still able to like drive over it, even while it was like peppered with holes. It took them 3 weeks to destroy one tiny bridge. Like, the Russians are brutal at aiming for some reason, man. Like it's so hard for them to strike a target accurately, in my opinion. And it's like, it's kind of almost embarrassing. So, like, we'll get rocked and like they'll destroy one house. The house they destroy was like abandoned for 6 months. You know what
Mhm,
I mean? It's like, I don't know, maybe divine intervention, but like,
mhm,
they're quite terrible at striking their targets. Even when I was so following that rotation, I was relaxing a little bit in Kiev. Ended up being under one of the biggest rocket attacks since the start of the war. It's in the middle of November, and I think at that time they were trying to strike the energy infrastructure of the city.
mhm, mhm.
Like the whole night, not once did the power even flicker. Like I don't think they hit a single energy substation, but they
Yeah.
just rocked a ton of civilian like buildings, you know what I mean? So it's like they it feels like they're so bad at aiming. Like they just like I don't it's like literally embarrassing, man. It's like just a waste. It's a waste of money in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think they use a mass strategy. It's just mass. They don't. It's not precision strikes. Let's say.
Yeah, but you would think like some of these are like cruise missiles, right? Like they cost like what
Uh-huh.
like over $1 million to launch one of these things, like caliber cruise missiles or whatever, and it's like they can't even hit their target.
But I had a question for you about Huliaipole. So you mentioned the shortage of manpower. Did you see something like this on your end? The shortage of manpower. Did you see rotations of forces in the rear?
Yeah.
How does it work?
So I remember when we were in that area, it was like you could feel the shortage of manpower. Like, I mean, honestly, Huliaipole is occupied, I think, at this point. So I
Mhm,
can probably talk about it a bit more. But like even closer to that like area, there was like no checkpoints, man. Like we never passed a
mhm,
single roadblock, you know what I mean? It was like you're in these houses, somehow there was army, like there was a lot of soldiers, like you ended up seeing a lot of guys, but you always heard the stories from the guys that were rotating off the front line, and it would be like horror stories, like two dudes covering a square kilometer of ground, and it's like that's like how do you even defend against that, you know what I mean? It's like, and at that point we were covering a drone team, and the Ukrainians were utilizing drones quite heavily in this area to try
mhm,
to slow the Russian advance. And like I mean, from what I could, at least, I'm not a drone operator, so I don't know, but like they seemed like competent people. Like I'm sure they were like as effective as they could be or whatever. But it was like it's just not enough. Like you know what I mean? It wasn't enough to like slow the advance. Like you need guys
mhm,
on the ground actually defending it. You like drones are only so effective, and I think you even mentioned it in your videos. Like Huliapoli does not have like a lot of buildings to defend. It's like you can't defend that area well. You know what I mean? So
mhm,
it's like once
mhm,
the Russians start pushing it, it's only a matter of time. And I would almost argue that like just based on how everything happened in that area, like it wasn't even like the Ukrainians like suffered a catastrophic defeat. Like it looks more like they just realized it was an unsustainable area and they
mhm,
started pulling out a little bit. So they pulled back or whatever to at least not sacrifice their guys. Like you know what I mean? Like it's not a super like you can't defend that area, so you're just going to like have your guys die if they're going in there constantly. So they pulled back to a safer area. That's at least what it seems like what happened. It wasn't like it seemed more organized is what I'm trying to say. Like
mhm, mhm.
while I was in that sector, there wasn't like nobody was like panicking or anything. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like
okay.
everybody knew it was a hard situation, but and yeah, it was understaffed for sure. But like I said, no, there was no panic. And from the entire time I was there, yeah, the Russians were gaining territory, but it was never like oh, there was a collapse of the front line. Like there was never anything
Mm,
like that. There was never like a rout or anything. You know what I mean? So it was all. It did feel like quite controlled, even with the situation being so bad.
mhm. And do you still see rotations at the rear, armored vehicles, or how is it like the military movement at the rear?
Yeah, yeah. So like truthfully, I would say it was lagging for most of the rotation. Kind of coming up to the end, you started to see more like heavy equipment. Like I think I seen like a few MRAPs, a tank or whatever rolling through. Like just from what I witnessed, I'm sure like the Ukrainians were moving more
Yeah, yeah.
equipment and supplies, but it wasn't like it wasn't anything like substantial. It wasn't like, oh shit, this is gonna win the war. Like it was never It
Mm,
was never anything like so substantial that felt like the tide of the battle was going to turn. Like it
mm,
actually didn't. It didn't feel like that at all. Like truthfully, it felt like we were. It just yeah, it didn't feel like that. It felt like we were in a tough situation, and it was going to get more tough. That's what it kind of felt like.
is it true that there's some sort of black market of medical equipment going on?
Like, what do you mean? Can you like elaborate?
So, is it true that some units hoard medical equipment and then sell it to other units that need it?
So I've heard of stuff like that happening. Luckily, I've never like personally encountered anybody doing that. So that's good. But yeah, man, of course, like there's always the risk of that, like 100%. Especially like I've heard the horror stories of like stuff kind of just getting, every time you pass through like a checkpoint or somebody looks at something, oh, I'll take a few of those tourniquets or I'll take a few of this stuff. So I always hear of stuff like, maybe getting skimmed off the top when you're bringing it into the
Mm,
country. I've never personally had that happen to me though. Like I've heard the horror stories,
mm,
but I mean, like I'm sure in some cases that does happen. Like truthfully, I bet that does happen in some cases. Is it widespread? Is that like a massive issue? Highly doubtful.
mm,
I don't think anybody's really trying to do that. There's always going to be a few bad apples trying to make a quick buck, though. I do know that there is some type of like maybe black market kind of thing going on or whatever. But again, I've never experienced anything like
mm,
personally. And all of those things are just rumors. Like all of that people talking about a black market or buying and selling this. Like I truthfully don't think it's like super common or it's quite well hidden because I don't know of anybody doing this and I don't know of any firsthand accounts, I guess.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, Alex, you've done 4 tours, if I understand, 4 tours in Ukraine. Is it
Yeah.
over or you plan on going back?
No, I'm going back for sure. Like I have so much I have a ton of medical supplies sitting here at my house and I want to get that back into Ukraine. And yeah, I'll probably go back and no, not even probably. I will 100% go back and keep working until I, either get injured or the war ends most likely. So, yeah. I just hope I never get injured, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
we all
hopefully.
hope so. What type of
Yeah.
supplies do you have?
Yeah, so I have a lot of trauma and medical supplies, defibrillators, like advanced airway supplies, like eye gels, like supraglottic airways, hemostatic dressings, like tons of life-saving equipment. And a lot of the stuff is harder for Ukrainians to get, especially like the defibrillators and things like that. So, these things can be useful. Even when I was there. Last I noticed that a lot of the trucks in my unit could use like defibrillators and some of these supplies that I have, so I'd like to get that stuff moved over. But also on top of that, I actually just started my own NGO. So like I've kind of, like we were just talking about, it's been 4 rotations into Ukraine. I've been working or I've been volunteering since 2022. I kind of feel like naturally the next step in this direction is to like make it more of I guess a job for me. Like I want to do more, like I want to focus more on this with my life. So I created a medical NGO, and it's called Rapid International Medical Support, or just RIMS. So on my next trip to Ukraine, I'm going to be kind of going under the banner of my own NGO. So I'll be doing this logistics runs, but I'll be still working with my medical battalion that I've been volunteering with to get a rotation done in. But like I want to also focus on providing like training to soldiers and making sure that I can deliver medical supplies where they need to go, and then just supporting these frontline deployments as well. So that's kind of I would say the trajectory of where my life's going now.
And do you see an impact of UGVs now in terms of
Oh yeah.
medevacs?
100%, man. And it just ties into exactly what I was talking about. Like it's just so difficult to get like, just logically speaking, right? Like you have a team of maybe 4 people in an ambulance or 3 people in an ambulance and you're going to try to pick up a wounded soldier. It's so risky, and now you're risking the lives of three people to go and save this wounded soldier, and it is important to get that person. So yeah, it's worth taking the risk. But like, let's say you get hit or whatever, now you have like three medics down.
Mm,
Okay, so just to go back to your question, yeah, I do see UGVs making a massive impact on the ground. So one of the big risks, like I was talking about earlier, is just trying to get to the wounded patient. Just with the front line being so filled with drones, it's so dangerous nowadays. And if you can have an unmanned vehicle make its way to actually pick up the wounded soldier and be able to extricate them, it's going to save, you know, medics' lives. And it's going to make like these positions that traditionally were very hard to access, like I was talking about, you know, our armored vehicle, it's heavy, we can't get to their blindages.
mm,
If we use an unarmored vehicle, we're putting ourselves at risk. So it's like you're taking that whole risk factor out of the equation. You can get an unmanned vehicle into the position where the wounded is, have the soldiers load them up, get them back to your stabilization point as quick as possible, and then you can evacuate them. So I would say that that could cut down. And we've already seen it actually in limited uses where it's significantly cut down evacuation time, because you know in some areas of the front line you might not be able to evacuate a soldier for 2 days, but if you can get an unmanned vehicle in there you could do it within a few hours, you know, because all you need
mm,
is you need luck to be on your side really. But if you can get a unmanned vehicle in and out, you're not risking your own guys to do that. So I don't
mm.
know.
That's very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to keep an eye on these technological
Oh yeah.
advancements. Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you honestly want to talk about technological advancements of war, like drones first came out around the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
would
of
say, like,
course.
that
Yeah.
was your first widespread use of like drones, and that was when they had like the Mavic drones that would have like the grenade that just like kind of
Mhm.
falls or whatever. Like, it was quite primitive in drone
Yeah,
technology.
yeah.
2 years after that, we start to see Mavic drones appearing in Ukraine in small numbers. You know, it started off with the Ukrainians capitalizing on it. Russians learned. Then the Ukrainians developed like the kamikaze drone, FPV drone market. Russians caught up. So just over 4 years, we went from like a drone that has to drop a grenade and you have to like fly it right over to now you have like kamikaze drones that can like fly at like fast speeds, very precise. You have like incendiary drones or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you can see those videos, they're like basically flamethrowers that destroy these nets, like whatever, like the
Mm,
technology, UGVs, evacuating soldiers, mounting heavy machine guns on those like tracked like mini, it's like mini tanks essentially. Like the technological advancement coming out of this war is extraordinary. And I think you know, we're at the point where the reason why trench warfare is so useful is I feel like once you've hit a point in technology, technology's advanced so like war technologies advance so quickly that like medicine can't keep up with it or tactics can't keep
mm,
up with it. So I feel like once you hit that point, your only option is to just hunker down, build a trench, and like fight it out. You know, I feel like every time we war advances too quickly, you just have to naturally revert to trench warfare until like things kind of get balanced. It happened in World War I. It's like we're repeating World War I. You know what I mean? Like it
mm,
was the same thing. You know, you started World War I off, and people were still using Napoleonic tactics in an era of like repeating rifles, machine guns, etc. You know, in today's day and age, you have a lot of the Western military, at least Ukraine and Russia's catching up,
mhm,
but a lot of the Western military is like learning how to fight a war based off of the Cold War tactics, when like the war in today's day and age is much different. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's like it's advanced so quickly. I don't even think we can keep up with it. And it'll take a long while before like tactics and everything kind of keeps up with like the advancements in war.
And as a wrap up, what message do you want to tell everyone about your experience as a combat medic, and what else you can think of for your future plans in Ukraine?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna keep volunteering. I'm gonna keep working as a medic. I'd like to expand my NGO, kind of start my own medical operation, just mainly delivering and transporting supplies, providing training, supporting these deployments. So I'm going to be focusing on this a lot. I hope I hope I can make some type of difference. I guess my thing that I can leave this with is, I'm just one person. The NGO, it's small right now with a few people. So hopefully I can make a difference with that. But the point I want to leave off with is I'm one person, and if everybody was to make like a step into the right direction, everybody does one thing that they can do to like help Ukraine if that's what they want to do. If everybody makes like a small step to help, so much more would change. You know what I mean? Like you would see like the tide of the war change quite quickly. I think if there was more
Mhm.
support, really. And it sucks that I feel like after 4 years, there's so much fatigue around the war, and people have kind of forgotten about this. But I think it's really important to keep it in the spotlight because you know it doesn't matter what your opinion is politically, if you support Ukraine or if you don't, whatever. This is a massive point in our history, and I think we need to be aware of what's going on. And if you want to help, I think even in such a small way, like even just building nets or whatever, like sending over some food or whatever, you know what I mean? Like the smallest things can make such a big difference if everybody pitches in together. And I think that's yeah, I think that statement can be applied to a lot of different things in life, anyways.
Absolutely. Alex, thank you for sharing your experience as a combat medic. And who knows, maybe we'll have the honor of inviting you again on the show, but this time from the front lines.
Yeah, 100% on my next rotation, I'll have to get a interview going.
Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks for
you.
having me on here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.